good afternoon, everyone. Some incredible breaking news to tell you about.
At their best, journalists give people situational awareness during emergencies and save lives. As wildfires ripped through eastern San Diego County in October 2003, reporter Iram Soto did just that. Soto was working for the San Diego Union-Tribune's weekly Spanish-language edition. He drove toward the fires to interview farm workers.
It was all full of smoke. You couldn't really breathe, and they were still picking tomatoes and strawberries. They didn't even know that there were evacuation orders.
It was Soto who told the farm workers to evacuate. 20 years later, he says he could have never delivered that crucial news had the weekly not existed. So he was heartbroken last month when he heard the paper's new owner, Alden Global Capital, had killed the Spanish-language edition. The private equity firm laid off the UT en Español's editor and 2 reporters. Soto worries that 2 decades of gains will now be lost. The UT en Español served a county where 35% of its 3 million people are Latino, and 150,000 cross the border with Mexico daily.
Before this publication, the Union-Tribune's coverage of immigrant communities, of Latino communities, of border communities were very centered on crime and drug trafficking, etc. When this publication opened, it broadened it to cover the arts, community leaders, that uplifted people that were doing real change in the community.
Representatives for both the Union-Tribune and Alden refused to comment. Tim Franklin is director of the Medill Local News Initiative at Northwestern University. He says Alden puts the bottom line first.
Alden is going to jettison what it views as its most costly or least profitable pieces of its operation.
But Alden is hardly the outlier. Franklin just updated a large Medill database on local news organizations across the country. He says ethnic media took a huge hit during the pandemic as its main source of advertising revenue, mom and pop businesses, shuttered.
In 2020, there were about 900 ethnic media outlets in the United States. We've lost 173 of those in the last 3 years since the pandemic. And of the 173 that closed, 106 were Latino publications, most of those Spanish language publications.
The timing couldn't be worse for those who depended on the weekly. This is an election year with immigration, education, and civil rights on the ballot.
It limits their ability to participate in democracy or for them to even prepare their children to participate in democracies.
Arelis Hernandez, vice president for print with the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, says so many communities are still dominant Spanish speakers.
Latinos have grown to more than 19% of the population, and we're continuing to grow. There's a migrant population that is increasingly needing resources in their language to be able to navigate this new world of the United States.
Art Castaneris is publisher of the Spanish-language weekly La Prensa San Diego. He says even many bilingual people like to read their news in Spanish.
It's not just the language. It's understanding the culture, understanding the impact of all of these issues and how they impact Latinos and being sensitive to that.
For Iram Soto, it's also about trust. He says the UT Spanish-language edition gained trust with local Latinos in 2007 when firestorms returned. He reported on migrants who were burned to death atop Tecate Peak.
We found the bodies of people who were burned. We found, we told the stories of people who were lost crossing the border and the stories behind it and how people in the community rallied and provided the resources for rescuers to go and find their loved ones.
Soto says those pieces told Latinos that the paper cared about them. He fears that's no longer true. Amita, Sharma, KPBS News.